But what I have found after years and years and years of doing this work clinically and training other clinicians and seeing clients' transformations and my own personal growth journey is that when we befriend the parts of ourselves that are stuck doing and feeling difficult things, rather than battling them and shaming them, our transformation is much faster, much more easeful, and filled with self-compassion. And it turns out that compassion and connection are much more effective than shame and fear in engendering true transformation, second order change. And that's what we're going for, is truly transformed lives.
Partner betrayal is disorienting, heartbreaking, and results in absolute confusion for the betrayed partner. You worry that nothing in your life was real, and you fear that you will never be able to trust your spouse or yourself again. Well, welcome to the Rebuilding Trust podcast with Carol the Coach. I'm Carol Jurgensen-Sheets, aka Carol the Coach, and what I can promise is that when you listen to my podcast, you'll begin to believe that there is hope. We will be hearing from experts all over the world who specialize in problematic sexual behavior, sex addiction, and infidelity. Together, we will be asking them the hard questions about how you both can rebuild safety, find strengths, grieve and mourn what you had, what you never had, and what you fear you will never find again. The truth is that rebuilding trust is possible, and I am going to show you the steps to working together to build a whole new marriage based on the honesty, authenticity, and transparency that your marriage deserves. Rebuilding Trust with Carol the Coach.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Rebuilding Trust, the podcast that affords you an opportunity to grow stronger individually and as a couple. So today I have an expert in the field of IFS, and she's going to be talking about what that is. She's got a new formula that is very helpful in moving towards something, in getting healthier and seeing yourself differently. And I want to welcome Jenna Riemersma to our show. You're the leading expert within our family of IFS. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for educating our listening audience.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back with you, Carol. Thank you for inviting me again. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. First of all, Jenna, I mean, you've got so many designations after your name. Tell our listening audience a little bit about you and what you've been doing professionally for several decades.
Yes. Well, I'm a CSAT supervisor and a CMAT supervisor. So in the world of betrayal trauma and compulsive behavior, that's one area that I've spent a lot of time. And I'm also a certified IFS therapist and certified clinical consultant in the IFS world. And so that means that this way of understanding ourselves that is deeply compassionate and enormously transformational that we call IFS is also a passion of mine. And part of why I wrote this new book and what we're chatting about today is how these two worlds can come together in a way that really enhances our self-compassion and our personal transformation and recovery.
Yes. And you know, Jenna, that I really believe that we have to focus on what we can change or how we can see ourselves differently to move forward towards post-traumatic growth. And IFS work, as well as you personally, have done a great job in keeping our clients moving towards. I mean, sometimes in our field, I think it can be possible to work with a therapist or a coach where you're rehashing the same old stuff as if it's the enemy. And IFS is a beautiful way of looking at how have some of those behaviors, how have some of those parts of yourself worked for you in the past? And what do you need in terms of parts work to move towards more self-compassion? So you have gotten the approval of the biggest guru. In the world of sex addiction, that would be Patrick Carnes. But in the world of IFS, there's one person that started this all, and he has endorsed you 100%. Tell me about that relationship with Mr. Schwartz.
Well, Dr. Richard Schwartz, about 40 years ago, really revolutionized the field of psychology because he noticed, as you and I may have noticed, that when we fight against the parts of ourselves and the parts of others that we don't like, that inner battle tends to get worse, not better. And what he discovered is the counterintuitive truth that when we actually become curious and befriend these difficult parts of ourselves or of our clients, they tend to calm down, help us understand the message that they have for us, and open the doorway to their transformation. And that is a radically counterintuitive approach. Most of us, like me, there's a part of me that wants to eat all the Oreos and another part of me that wants to go to the gym. And those two parts of me are at war. And we tend to fight against the parts of ourselves that we don't like and try to make them stop or lock them in the basement. And as a result, at least for me, my cookie eating part tends to jump up and take over and eat the whole box of cookies. And betrayed partners and people dealing with compulsive behavior can really relate to this. It's very common for betrayed partners to say, well, a part of me wants to leave, but a part of me wants to stay. And those two parts of me are at war, and I don't know what I should do. And it's very common for people struggling with compulsive behavior to say, well, a part of me wants to act out, but a part of me is horrified by that idea and wants to be sober, if we want to use that terminology. And those parts of me are at war. And the more those parts of me battle, the worse I feel. And the beautiful truth is that when we stop fighting these parts of ourselves and we begin befriending them, moving toward them with curiosity and compassion, we can relate to ourselves and our own inner battles much more effectively. And that is what Dr. Richard Schwartz discovered. He's created this whole sort of approach called internal family systems, which reflects that it's very normal to have an internal family of parts, many different parts of ourselves that operate in a system. So they react to each other. And this has become a very, very popular and exciting approach to transformation and healing, because when these parts of ourselves are battling each other, we tend to stay stuck. So for people who are attempting recovery, there's going to be this chronicity of relapsing or an inability to get sober. For people dealing with betrayal trauma, there's this ongoing sense of, do I stay? Do I go? Do I stay? Do I go? Second guessing, self-doubting, and challenge with boundaries. And so I find that this is an extremely helpful approach. It is recognizing that all parts of us have positive intent for us.
Mm-hmm. So can I ask you something?
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, and I want to do this for both an addict who's searching for recovery and a partner. I'm thinking about one of the most common things I hear from addicts when they're struggling and they may or may not be in recovery, but I'm thinking about the man or the woman that isn't yet. And they've done something they didn't want to do, looked at porn, saw a prostitute, went to a massage parlor, had an affair, whatever. And as soon as it's done, they're like, I am never doing that again. I am so shameful. I hate myself. I wish I would die. I'm never doing this again. And then 20 minutes later, they're calling the next affair partner or the next escort. Now, what part might be operating there, and how might that person look at that part differently?
Mhm. Well, typically we think of ourselves as one unified entity. We think, I am this. So I am anxious. I am bad. I am an addict. I am depressed. We think of ourselves as one entity. And what IFS allows us to do is recognize that this erratic behavior, this behavior that where we find ourselves doing things we don't want to do, is because it's a very natural reflection of these different parts of ourselves. And so in the situation that you just described, we can hear that there's one part of the individual that is trying to help them get a need met in some way by acting out sexually. Then there's another part of that individual that is trying to help them live with integrity or be faithful to their relationship, that comes in after the other part acted out sexually, and has a lot of self-loathing, a lot of regret, a lot of resolve. I'll never do this again. I heard you mention a part that comes in to try to help with the hopelessness by having suicidal ideation. There's no hope. This keeps going round and round. I'm a horrible person. I'm just going to end it all. So you can hear that there's this dialogue of all these different parts. Well, normally these different parts just take us over and we act out of these parts in erratic ways. But if we can get into relationship with these parts, which is why I've created a simple tool to help us do that, because when we are in the moment of our greatest difficulty, we're highly triggered, we're in that state, we need something simple that we can use and remember. And so the tool I've created that I call Move Toward is like a shorthand of internal family systems, IFS. And it's just 3 steps: notice, know, and need. And so in that moment, if the individual recognized, gosh, the part of me that was trying to help me feel better or get my connection needs met by acting out sexually has just taken over, and now my critic part is yelling at me, could just notice, how is my critic showing up? Oh, well, it's in my thoughts. I've got these running thoughts about what a horrible person I am, how awful I am. Can I notice that that's one part of me, but not all of who I am? So that's step 1, is just noticing, this is a part of me. It's not all of who I am. And here's how it's showing up. Step 2 is know. We ask the critic, what do you want me to know about you? What do you want me to know about how you're trying to help me? About why you showed up right now? And it's not like we're hearing voices or anything weird, but we're going to get a pretty clear sense pretty quickly when we stop fighting that and we start getting curious about it, that the critic is really trying to help us live with integrity. It's trying to fight back against the difficult behavior that this other part that's acting out is engaged in. And it's trying to help us not have losses in our lives. There's many different reasons why that critic is activated. And just like with you and with me and in any relationship, once a part of us feels seen and understood and heard, it tends to calm down, take us over with less intensity. And then we can ask this part of ourselves, which is just step 3, know what what do you need from me right now to feel a little less activated and a little more comforted? So notice that the me that we're talking about is who we truly are. It's our highest self. We are not that part of ourselves. That part is one part of us, but who we want to be as we're pursuing recovery and healing is leading from that highest self that is deep inside of all of us. And so from our highest self, we're asking this critic part, for example, what do you need from me to feel a little less comforted? A little less activated and a little more comforted. And quite often, the sense that we may get is that the critic needs us to go work with the part that's acting out and to address the underlying vulnerability, the shame, the trauma, whatever it is that's driving the acting out behavior. Because if the acting out part can calm down, the critic doesn't have to act so intensively. And so it gives us a much more effective way to move forward when we can get curious about these parts of ourselves. rather than battling them. When we battle against ourselves, our suffering gets worse. When we move toward ourselves with curiosity and compassion, our suffering tends to lessen and we open the doorway to real transformation. What we learn is all these parts of us are trying to help us. They've gotten stuck in some really bad roles. So what they're doing is not okay. It's not helping. It's making things worse. And these parts of us don't actually want to be doing those things. They would rather be doing what they were designed to do. And so when we in our highest self can relate to these parts of us with curiosity and compassion, find out how they're trying to help, how it isn't working, and what they need from us, they can begin to transform, so that rather than being in a battle for the rest of our lives, you'll hear this in 12-step communities sometimes. You're sitting in here doing your work, but your addiction, quote unquote, is out in the parking lot doing push-ups, where the sense is you have to spend the rest of your life fighting yourself, fighting that part of you, that this will always be the battle until you draw your last breath. That's one way of
That's a
viewing
choice.
it. That's
a choice.
But another way to view it is that rather than fighting the part that's out in the parking lot doing push-ups because we're at a war with that part of ourselves, what if we had coffee together and said, hey, how are you trying to help me? What are you afraid would happen if you didn't take over and make me act out in this way? What is it that you really need so that you don't have to keep doing this? You can do something else in my life. And it allows that part that's out in the parking lot doing push-ups to transform, so we don't have to continue to battle ourselves in this way. Well,
as you speak, I'm almost hypnotized by the mindfulness that comes out of your mouth. And in your 3-part formula is very mindful. And I agree that addiction will never get better if there's that battle. That at some point you have to integrate the parts by understanding them so that you can love each other and move forward and move toward, my word would be post-traumatic growth. Yes. Do you have a word for move toward what? That's the name of her book, folks. Her new book is Move Toward. And then what's the second part of it? It's a simplified IFS therapy tool to welcome all parts of you. And I was channeling Kristen Neff and our very own Darren Ford, who does mindfulness, and I'm certified in mindfulness. And I love that the judgment, which is obviously what we want to work on to have empathy, the judgment is gone. It's really about curiosity and self-compassion. And that's what you said, right? Yes. And what we're moving toward with this curiosity and compassion are the different parts of ourselves that are stuck in difficult feelings and behaviors. But I think one thing that's very important to note is that what we are not saying is that the behaviors that these parts of us are stuck doing are okay, that we're not responsible for them, that we don't need to work to change them, and that we're not accountable. That is not what we're saying. And to betrayed partners, how this is applicable, what we're not saying is move toward your betraying partners, acting out with curiosity and compassion. That's not it. What I tend to find with betrayed partners is that one of the common struggles, let's say, is to set boundaries. And what partners will routinely say when they are working on their boundaries, one part of themselves tends to be in the room writing the boundary statement. And it's probably, in my experience, it's usually the part that wants to set a boundary firmly and say, if he or she ever does this thing again, then I'm out of here. I'm leaving. The problem is that's only one part of them. And
if that part writes the boundary and then they go through life and their person does do the behavior again, other parts of them tend to jump in that are fearful of losing the relationship or the attachment. And they don't want to follow through with that boundary because they're trying to help in a different way. So one part of the partner, the betrayed partner, wants to leave and another part wants to stay. And they get in this stuck spot and they come into their therapist and say, what's the matter with me? Why can't I follow through on my boundaries? There's nothing at all the matter with you. The reason the boundary feels unsuccessful is because we haven't brought all parts of you to the table and heard from all different parts of you. So we want to hear from the part of you that says, if my partner does that thing again, I want a divorce. And we want to hear from the part that says, what about the kids? What about the fact that I'm not employed outside the home and can't support myself financially? What about this, and this, and this? So there are many different parts of ourselves. And what we want to do with our betrayed partners is invite all those different parts to the table when we're discussing boundaries, and then make the decision from our highest self. So if you envision a boardroom with the CEO at the head of the table, our highest self is the CEO from which we want to make our recovery decisions and our growth decisions. And so the idea is our inner CEO, our highest self, is going to welcome all parts of us to come and sit around the table. And every single part of us gets to share the microphone, gets to have an opinion, gets to say what they want us to know and what they need in this process. And then our inner CEO makes the wisest choice for our entire system in that moment. And what will result is a boundary that we will be able to follow through with when the eventuality happens. So we will not disempower ourselves by throwing out threats and then not following through. What we're going to do is we're going to step into this boundary work. We're going to be able to state a boundary with clarity and with courage, and then confidently be able to follow through with that boundary if the behavior that is unacceptable happens again.
You know, I know in working with partners and with men or women in recovery, IFS is so popular because it is so gentle, and it is a lot about self-compassion. So I'm glad you made that last point about, however, we still hold the person accountable. We still hold the person responsible for figuring out how to employ all the parts, how to learn about them, and do life differently. Now, it was interesting because when you said that about the partner, I thought for our listening audience, this may be the first time they've heard about internal family systems and parts theory, and certainly the first time they've probably heard about your very simplified 3-part formula that you can apply in your life in regards to anything. I mean, you brought it up initially when you said, I made the wrong choice as to what to eat. Would you share with our listening audience the different parts?
Well, there are many, and everyone's internal system is unique. That's what makes up our unique personalities. And so we can't definitively say each one of us has this part and this part and that part, but there are some common categories, particularly that show up when we're working with compulsive behavior or betrayal trauma. And here are a couple of examples on both sides of that equation, how this can be helpful. Okay. So remember, our 3 steps are notice, know, and need. That's all we have to remember. That's all we have to do. So how that can be helpful for a person struggling with compulsive behavior is they're going through their day, something happens, and the part of them that wants to act out in this compulsive way takes them over. In addiction work, we call that a trigger. So a trigger has taken them over, and all of a sudden, All they can think about, all they feel is this desire to go act out in this way. It doesn't mean that's all of who they are. It means that that part of them has completely taken them over in that moment. So if we can stop for a split second and help them notice, know, and need, we can totally change what happens next. Because what we typically do is either that part takes them over at 100% and they go act out and then spiral with the shame and regret and remorse later. Or another part of them jumps up and tries to battle it, tries to lock it in the basement, lock it away, make it stop, vilify it, and has a lot of negative things to say about it. In this approach, what we might do is just notice, there's a part of me that's here that's trying to help me by getting me to act out. Let me see if I can just notice that it's here. How is it showing up? Okay, it's showing up in an urge, in my thoughts, in rumination, in these emotions. Okay, noticing this part of me is here. And I'm noticing it's just one part of me. It's not all of who I am. Notice what a shift that is. Now I've got a little access to my inner CEO, my highest self, and this part that wants to engage in the compulsive behavior. From that place, it deactivates the trigger a little bit. And our inner CEO, our highest self, can ask this part that wants to act out, what do you want me to know about you? Mm-hmm. What do you want me to know about why you just got activated just now? And we're going to get a sense that's going to come up that's going to make sense of that. It's going to be something like, well, your boss just yelled at you and you felt shame in front of the entire office. And I know that one of the fastest ways to feel better fast is by releasing these sexual hormones. And I know that doesn't work in the long run, but that pain and that shame felt intolerable. I was trying to help mediate the shame and help you feel like you were worthy, even if it was just for a split second. And maybe we're going to get a sense of, wow, how long have you been trying to help me in this way? And maybe we're going to get a sense of, well, since you were 5 and mom and dad were screaming and you were afraid and hiding under the bed and discovered that if you could touch yourself, you would feel a little bit better for a while. And all of a sudden we start to develop more and more understanding and compassion for this really young part that's desperately trying to help with shame, fear, all kinds of scary things by doing the thing that it learned to do when the person was 5 years old. And then from this place of our highest self, our adult self, we can ask this little 5-year-old part, what do you need from me to feel less activated, to feel more comforted right now, to feel like you don't have to rush in and take over like this? And that little 5-year-old part may need a lot of things. It may need some comfort. It may need us to reach out to a friend and get some real support and connection rather than artificial support and connection. It may need to have a little bit of an update that we're not 5 years old anymore. We're whatever our adult age is, and observe us being able to make I statements to our boss and set boundaries. There's a lot of things that part of us may need to know to help it calm down and not take us over so much anymore. And this can happen in the span of about 30 seconds in our own mind, in the quiet of our own mind. Notice, know, and need. And in a heartbeat, we have a much more effective, compassionate, and successful way of managing the trigger than when we try to fight it or let it take us over. If those are our only two options, it either takes us over or we try to fight it. We're always at war with ourselves. But if we befriend this part of ourselves, we're not saying what it's doing is okay. It's not. What it's doing is not okay. It's not helping. It's making things worse. But we begin to understand the story behind this part of us, and it helps it to calm down and ultimately sets the stage for its transformation. Now, obviously, that deep unburdening work that we do in IFS, that deep trauma work that heals this part of us and releases it from the job of trying to get us to act out, that's a more extensive approach than just notice, know, and need. But boy, when we need that in the moment that we're triggered, whether it's to act out or eat all the cookies or whatever it might be, this can be enormously helpful. Same thing goes for betrayed partners. Let's say the betrayed partner is in the moment, and let's say that their spouse is in long-term recovery, they've had the full formal disclosure, there's, rebuilt trust, it's been, a long time, but a trigger comes along that activates the part of them that remembers and holds that betrayal trauma and makes them want to rage and lash out. So rather than battling it or letting it take over at 100%, notice, no need. And the partner can just take a moment and say, wow, I'm noticing that a rage part of me is here right now. I'm noticing it showing up with a pounding heartbeat, and my fists are clenched and my jaw is tight, and I'm wanting to scream these horrible things. And I'm noticing this is one part of me. It's not all of who I am. Now, from my highest self, my adult self, my inner CEO, I'm going to ask this part, what do you want me to know about you? What do you want me to know about why you got triggered just now? About how you're trying to help me? What do you want me to know about how long you've been stuck in this role of rage to try to keep me safe? And some things are going to come to mind that are going to make sense of that. Maybe this is the piece of the betrayal that hasn't fully been processed. Maybe there's some deeper pain that it's activating that goes back to some of our earlier years. There could be all kinds of reasons for that. And then we can ask this raging part, what do you need from me to feel a little more comforted and a little less activated? And that part may need to be spoken for. And so the betrayed partner may come into the relationship and say, I need to let you know that I'm feeling triggered right now. There's a part of me that is enraged that wants to take me over. And I know it's trying to keep me safe. And here are the things that it's concerned about. So it may need to be spoken for and represented, but spoken for by our adult self, by our highest self, rather than taking us over and speaking from this part of ourselves, which would be yelling, raging, screaming, throwing things. And there's a huge difference there, because we can honor and represent that part of ourselves without being overtaken by it. And the more we get in relationship with these different parts of ourselves, the more secure they feel in our inner ability to lead from our highest self. And they stop taking us over as frequently. And ultimately, this sets the stage for their transformation. So it's a beautiful, compassionate, gentle, effective approach.
Yeah, I was just talking to a partner today, and she said, together we have been exploring God, our higher power, and we're feeling like that's a real tool for us. It really brings about security. And it has definitely helped my husband's sobriety. And I'm so happy for that. She said, I am getting in my own way because she didn't say foreboding joy, but that's what she has. She continues to wonder when the shoe's going to drop. So what she noticed was that she can't enjoy what is happening in the moment. And she wants to go back to the past, which is where so much of their pain has been. And she's afraid to trust herself. Well, so I'm getting beyond your formula. So that's what she does.
Really, you're right in the middle of it. Yeah. But the way that we would understand what's happening is quite different. So rather than seeing it as she's getting in her way, which is seeing her as a monolith, what an IFS perspective would say is there's a part of her that is trying to help her not get hurt again by blocking her joy. And so in the moment, She could use notice, know, and need very effectively. She could say, wow, I'm noticing that my situation, my circumstances are joyful, but there's a part of me here that's blocking my access to that. Let me just notice how it's showing up. Feels like a guard over my heart. Feels like I can't connect to the feelings of joy. Let me just notice this is one part of me, but it's not all of who I am. And let me ask this part, what do you want me to know about you? What do you want me to know about how you're trying to help me? And she's going to get a sense. I know these parts very well in our clients. She's going to get a sense that this part is terrified that if it lets her connect into any of this joy, that she's going to be set up for another blindsiding, that she's going to be set up for another betrayal, another shoe's going to drop. And this part has a rationale, and the rationale is it's better to not let you go there than to let you go there and then have that pain again. That would be worse than never going there. And so we can get to know where this part may be stuck and how it's trying to help. And then we can ask, what do you need from me right now to feel a little less activated and a little more comforted? And maybe what this part needs is updating. Different parts of ourselves get stuck in the past. This part may not be aware that their relationship has actually transformed substantially. It may need a real tour of the betraying partner's sobriety and recovery. It may need a way to kind of allow her adult self to dip a toe in the water of the joyful experience and then look around and see, okay, we're all right. This is okay. I'm not saying that I'm blindly trusting or that nothing bad is ever going to happen, but there's a different way to do this than to block it entirely. So notice what we're doing when clients come in and they say, I'm getting in my own way. Notice immediately the self-shaming, the criticism, I'm doing it wrong, I'm broken. When we relate to that part as a part and not all of who she is, first of all, the de-shaming is huge. Second of all, it's a much more effective way to help that to stop. Because if we fight against the part that's blocking the joy, you know what it's going to do? It's going to push back. It's going to block the joy even more because it says, you don't understand how I'm trying to protect you. You don't even know who I am. Like, I'm just going to push back more on that. And that's not ultimately helpful in the long-term ability for us to really step into that joy in an embodied way. But when we get in relationship, rather than trying to get in control of these parts of ourselves, they free up to transform and allow us from our highest self to step into life. And I loved what you said about the spiritual component. For many people, this journey is a spiritual one, however someone defines that spirituality. And it's really often from that place of our highest self that we do have that connection to the divine, that connection that is truly life-giving, not the spiritualizer parts that are trying to get us to do it right or say it right or go through the motions to please God or somebody else, but that authentic connection to the divine that is transformational. And that is coming from that place of our highest self in connection to the greater divine. And that's why this process is so powerful, because that divine experience is one, regardless of our faith tradition, it is one of relationship, connection, and compassion for all parts of us.
Well, and that's why you're the expert on this. And have you written 3 books?
4.
4. So tell everybody all 4 of your books. Again, today we're learning a simplistic way of applying IFS called Moving Towards. It's in the background of Jenna's bookcase. Share what you've written and how people can find you and how they can find the books.
Sure. Well, all my books are available on Amazon or wherever your favorite books are sold, and also through my website. You can get to my website by going to movetoward.com, and that's singular, movetoward.com. And the first book that I wrote is called Altogether You, and it's bringing these IFS concepts and helping to bridge the gap for people of Christian or Catholic faith. So really kind of translating IFS for people of faith, and that's called Altogether You.
Wow.
The next two books are clinical books, mostly for clinicians, but also for people who want to apply IFS to specific areas of therapy. Altogether Us and IFS Integration. IFS Integration is Altogether Us renamed and republished, and it has one chapter on a million different topics. So one chapter will be, how do you use IFS with addiction? The next chapter is IFS with couples. The next chapter is IFS in parenting. The next one is IFS in sexuality. The next one is IFS in neurodivergence. We've got EMDR, polyvagal, I mean, literally Enneagram. There's every chapter in the world in that book, and it's just a helpful, quick reference. And then my book that just launched, Move Toward, is IFS made simple. So it's taking the whole complex model and making it easy to remember and simple to apply so that any of us can use it in those moments when we desperately need it. And obviously, our healing journey is much more complicated than just getting to know different parts of ourselves. But what I have found after years and years and years of doing this work clinically and training other clinicians and seeing clients' transformations and my own personal growth journey is that when we befriend the parts of ourselves that are stuck doing and feeling difficult things, rather than battling them and shaming them, our transformation is much faster, much more easeful, and filled with self-compassion. And it turns out that compassion and connection are much more effective than shame and fear in engendering true transformation, second order change. And that's what we're going for, is truly transformed lives.
Well, I feel like that was the perfect way to close this podcast. You know, we're talking with, and you can see if you're watching this on YouTube, we're talking with Jenna Riemersma, right?
Yes, Riemersma.
And again, she makes this so simple, and she applies it. It sounds like you apply it to everything, but in the world of addiction and the world of partner betrayal, you found a way to help people, to help themselves, to help clinicians, to help themselves and their clients. And I just thank you so much for your work. It's absolutely amazing. It sounds like they can find you on Moving Toward website. Is there anything you're doing for the general public? You need to be out there speaking to the world.
Well, I do want to make this material accessible for people. And so I have a lot of free resources that I put out regularly. So if you come to my website, which you can access either by jennariemersma.com, but if you can't spell that, which most people can't, you can come to movetoward.com. And I have a lot of free resources there. So I've got free guided videos where I will guide you through this experience if you want to get to know a part of yourself or de-escalate triggers, for example. I have free downloadable worksheets. So if you prefer to journal through some exercises, I have that for you. I have an on-demand video course that people can take at their leisure that includes guided meditations, teaching, journaling exercises, just lots of different ways to try to help people apply this information, because it's very counterintuitive. What most of us find is it's exactly the opposite of what we naturally tend to do. And it's infinitely more effective and compassionate, but it takes a little bit of practice, and many people find it helpful to have a little guidance. And so I try to offer that with a lot of different free resources on my website, and I'm adding to those all the time. I have a free therapist locator there as well, because I'm no longer directly working with clients, but I have one locator to find a CSAT, another therapist locator to find an IFS therapist. And then I have what I believe to be the largest list of faith-based IFS therapists that is out there. And you can search under your state or your country, a variety of ways to search. So I've got 3 different therapist locators that I hope will be helpful for people as well in finding a good fit if they're in need of a therapist.
Well, that was certainly helpful for me. So I'll be making lots of referrals. And it's interesting because the woman I talked to today, she said, I'm going to keep working with you, Carol, but I feel like I need, in addition to you, somebody who can help me biblically and help me with my faith. And I said, that makes so much sense that there's that part of you that knows. So thank you for that 3-part formula. Notice, know, and need.
Mm-hmm.
I would think the need might be the toughest thing for people to be able to reckon with. I said the wrong word because that would seem like struggle, but to really be able to identify within themselves, what do I need? What am I needing right now?
I love that you said that, Carol, because this is such an important point. We, in the need question, we are not trying to figure out what that part of us needs. We're literally asking this part of us, just like we would if we were talking to a friend. So I wouldn't say, Carol, what do you need? And then say, I think, Carol, that what you need is, some wonderful self-care and a massage and some, soft music. Maybe you would like that. Maybe you wouldn't. I don't really know what you need. So I'm going to ask this part of myself, what do you need from me to feel a little more comforted? And that's important. We're not asking the part, what do you need from my partner? Or what do you need from the world? Or what do you need from my boss? We're literally asking the part of ourselves,
It's kind of stuck.
What do you need from me, my highest self? Because I'm here to take care of you. You may have felt alone for a very long time, stuck in this job, trying to make things better, and it's only making it worse. I'm here now as the adult to take care of you. What do you need from me so that you can feel a little more comforted? Because I've got this. And this is the beautiful fundamental message at the end of the day, is every one of us has a higher self inside of us that is able to lead us in wise, courageous, clear-minded, compassionate ways. And these different parts of ourselves don't always know that, but it is what they're longing for. And it's really a powerful message. Yeah.
And that's why the need is so important.
Yes.
Because oftentimes those parts don't get asked, what do you need?
Yeah,
right?
They never do.
Jenna, thank you so much for the work you do and for your gentle and compassionate ways. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much, Carol. And I appreciate all the beautiful work that you do in the world as well. Thanks for having me on again.
Love it. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.